Welcome, good morning, afternoon, and evening to those tuning in from diverse parts of the world. My name is Joel Adriance. I'm a member of IYF's core planning team for the event, and I'll be serving as the MC for this closing session, which wraps up the Our Future, Our Voices virtual summit. We have a really exciting program today, including remarks from Susan Reichley, IYF CEO, a dynamic conversation between Peter Lawhern, CEO of the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, and Nafula Wafula, a youth activist and member of the IYF board, and closing reflections from two members of the summit's Youth Advisory Committee, that's Anoka and Siwu Sisiwe. To start off today's program, I'd like to welcome Susan Reichley to the stage and ask her to share her remarks before inviting Peter and Nafula to the virtual stage.
Hello again, and welcome to the closing of Our Future, Our Voices. It's hard to believe it was just 5 days ago we launched the summit with our Youth Advisory Committee. It's been quite a journey we've been on together this week. As I told you on Monday, I had high expectations for this summit. I hope to come away feeling energized, encouraged, inspired, and challenged by the new ways of thinking, approaches, and perspectives. And I have to say, listening to all the amazing youth voices and the participants from around the globe, well, it really stretched my thinking and it inspired me beyond my wildest imagination. The speakers and those who joined from all over the world really rose to the occasion to share their ideas, their stories, expectations, and voices. And they were heard loud and clear. I'm so proud to be able to report to all of you today that more than 1,500 people tuned in to Our Future, Our Voices this week, an incredibly busy week around the globe. Even more important than this number, though, it's really the diversity that is illustrative in the heart of this virtual event. We had presenters and participants from 118 countries, and 64% identify as women. One of the speakers in the session titled, Everyone's Welcome, Learning from Youth-Led Movements, a young woman named Melissa Diamond said, ask yourself who's not in the room and do whatever you can to bring them in. And more than that, make it a goal to build a room where everyone is welcome. Well, I thought a lot about that this week as we all work towards a more inclusive society. And I think, and I hope you agree, that Our Future, Our Voices was a space where everyone felt welcome, a space where everyone felt safe and inspired to share their ideas and opinions with radical candor. After the first day of the summit, I got an email from a former colleague who was a senior official at USAID and actually a former ambassador. He had a very long day and he said he tuned into our summit just to see what was going on. And he wrote to me, the activism, energy, and diversity displayed was exhilarating and exactly the shot of adrenaline I needed. Well, I couldn't agree more. As I listened to the speakers and followed the discussion threads and session chats, it was clear people were not holding back. And often my only regret at the end of a session was that we just didn't have more time. But I'm really happy that we're going to keep this platform alive for a whole year, and we want to hear from you, and we hope you tune in. Throughout the week, I participated in a number of amazing sessions, from how to reduce violence in a generation to how an 11-year-old is using NASA data to track environmental impact in her community, from how we need to flip the funding paradigm in philanthropy, to how blockchain, something I must confess I didn't really understand before this event, how it creates greater accountability and inclusion. It was quite a week. Over and over, I was struck by the level of frank, urgent, and insightful comments. As one speaker noted in a session titled Youth-State Relations, one of the biggest challenges is getting young people to trust the government and the system to work for them. Well, this is so true, and it's so critical for where we are right now in the world. Because if we are to create a bright, shared future, young people must be engaged. And for engagement to happen, there must be trust. In another powerful session about investing in young people, change makers, and youth-led ventures, Deepa Gupta, she's an amazingly experienced social entrepreneur, activist, founder of 2 organizations focused on human rights, democracy, and climate action. She put it this way. She said, I seek a funder whose courage, and creativity matches my own. I seek a funder who knows I am their equal. Well, this really resonated strongly with me, as I know it must with many of you out there. The idea that institutions, organizations, and frankly, systems and world leaders must trust young people, and they have to treat them as their equal partners that they are. Now that these are great quotes, right? They stick with you, they inspire you, they make you want to create change in the world, but we should remember that they are more than just eloquent quotes. They are actually a call to action. They are a challenge thrown down to all of us who work in development, from young people who are leading change, who are closest to the problem, and who have values, which are the exact values we need to radically change our world and build back better. We need to trust them. We need to listen to their voices. We need to heed what they say and let that guide our actions as we move forward. Well, during the summit, we heard how important it was to support youth-led change. And you may recall at the beginning of the summit, I spoke to you about there was a big announcement, an important announcement that we were going to make on the last day. And I am so delighted to be able to do that now. Earlier this year, as COVID-19 began to spread across the globe, we met with IYF's Youth Alumni Council to hear how they were being impacted, and frankly, just to hear what we could do and to listen. And as always, this Youth Alumni Council, which represents more than 2,000 youth-led organizations around the globe that has been built by IYF over almost 2 decades, well, we developed together a global youth resiliency fund concept to bring on funders and partners to collaboratively work together to support young people who frankly are on the front lines, and they're creating change. They're not waiting for us. And so how could we support them more? Well, today I am so excited to formally announce that the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation has joined the fund with an investment of $500,000. This fund will be opened initially to the members of the IYF Youth Action Network of more than 2,000 youth-led organizations that I spoke about. But our intent is to bring on more funders in the future. And that'll allow us to open it up to a larger number of youth-led organizations who belong to other networks, and they can apply for the fund. So we hope that this fund that we've created and Conrad N. Hilton Foundation's initial investment will lead to exponential change and investment in the future of the world. So stay tuned for more information. We also plan that the impact of this summit will live far beyond this last session and these closing remarks. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to keep this platform open for an entire year. So all the summit content will be open and available. And we hope you will not only continue to access it, but you'll tell your friends and colleagues. So I invite you to visit this platform again and again, as I know I will. So before I wrap up, I'd also like to say thank you one more time to our amazing, premier partner, FedEx. This would not have happened without your initial investment a year ago and your trust in us before the whole world went virtual, as well as our featured partners, MasterCard Foundation, Conrad N. Hilton Foundation, Cummins, Tech Change, and HSBC. And of course, a big thank you to our ASL interpreters who contributed greatly to the inclusiveness of this event. We couldn't have done it without you. And most importantly, we couldn't have done it with all the amazing young voices that we heard throughout the week. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce our last live session of Our Future, Our Voices. It's a fireside chat with Nafula Wafula and Peter Lawhorn. Nafula is a youth and social justice activist, co-founder of the Grassroots Gender Justice Network, and we are grateful for her years of service on IYF's board. She joins us from Kenya. Peter is the president and CEO of the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation. He has 25 years of foundation and nonprofit leadership experience internationally with a focus on improving the well-being of vulnerable children. Among other things, they're going to discuss change-making, leadership, and the importance of investing in young people, as well as the challenges. To close, let me leave you with a final quote from a summit speaker named Tanya. She said, "Build partnerships with others working for the same causes. You're not alone. We are all in this together." So thank you again for joining this week and for contributing your voices. We are indeed all in this together. And now I would like to pass the main stage over to Peter and Nafula.
Thank you, Susan. And I would say that the whole Conrad and Hilton Foundation is very excited to be one of the initial funders of the Global Youth Resilience Fund. We are looking forward to seeing it grow, and we're also looking forward to bring other funders in along with us. And I think it's one that 10 time zones from one another. And I hope you, Nafula, let me just ask you a question to get us started. Tell me about your background. What brought you here to this summit, and what do you hope to do in the coming years?
Thank you so much for the question, Peter, and thank you again to IYF for the amazing virtual summit. So yes, my name is Nafula Wafula. I am from Nairobi, Kenya. I run a grassroots organization, which I actually co-founded right at the beginning of COVID in response to the issues that we were facing during the COVID period, and it's the Grassroots Gender Justice Network. In Swahili, it's essentially, the organization is called Tunawiri, which means let us thrive together. Apart from that, I'm also the Vice Chair for Policy and Advocacy at the Commonwealth Youth Council. I'm in this summit, first of all, because it's just brilliant to be able to listen to other young people that are doing amazing work to tackle some of the challenging issues we're facing in the world today. But also because I am a Global Laureate Fellow from 2015, and I also serve on the board of IYF as one of the young board members. And it has been amazing to be given it has been an amazing experience to be given an opportunity to serve in that position. I'm incredibly passionate about reducing inequalities and ensuring that human rights are respected. And my particular passion area is in addressing gender-based violence and pushing for gender justice in Kenya, on the continent of Africa, and across the globe. And what about you? If you could just perhaps share with us a little bit about yourself as well and what you're passionate about.
Sure. As Susan said, I've spent my career working on international development, and particularly about the well-being, survival, thriving of children. And a good deal of that time has been in Africa, in Morocco, in Mali. My wife is from Rwanda, and as you know, Nafula, we were married in your hometown in Nairobi 25 years ago. And we now have 3 college-aged kids who really keep me in touch with what youth are thinking and how different that may be from my own generation. So at the Hilton Foundation, we have our eyes both on the US domestically, what's going on here on youth, but also globally, and especially within Africa. So this conversation is going to be just a real learning experience for me, and I look forward to hearing from you. Let me ask you, what do you think is the major contribution of youth to the solution of the world's problems today? And what are the most impressive things you've seen?
Yeah, sure. I think, first of all, it's an exciting time that we're living in, particularly because we have, I think, the largest population of young people we've had ever, if I'm not wrong. And we also have a large population of young people that have had the privilege of getting an education and getting empowered. And so we are seeing more and more young people creating very innovative solutions to challenges that the world is facing today. I have seen in the work that I do, be it in the grassroots, in the communities that I get into, or even on a global sort of platform or stage, like what the IYF presents, or even in the Commonwealth Youth Council where I serve. I've seen young people taking on enormous challenges, leveraging on technology and creating solutions for their communities. And I think the most exciting thing is just the fact that that despite the fact that we have all these challenges that are coming up, even with this pandemic that we're seeing today, that we seem to have a generation of resilient young people that do not have a shortage in creativity. And it's just my hope that more of an opportunity or a platform can be created to ensure that young people are able to continue to solve the issues that they're facing in their communities. And which is why it's really, really interesting for me to have this conversation with you, particularly from to hear from you from the perspective of a funder or a funding organization. It would be interesting to hear what your thoughts are around authentic partnership and engagement. What is authentic partnership and what is authentic engagement, especially when you're talking about youth serving and youth-led organizations? And how can we make sure that engagement and partnership and funding is fair and it ensures collaboration from both sides?
Indeed, and I'd say half of my career has been heading nonprofits and half has been within foundations. So, I know both sides of that table, and I firmly believe that what was said earlier by Susan, quoting a speaker, is that it's only a partnership. It is not a question of a powerful partner and a weak partner, and that it is important that both sides bring courage and creativity, both sides listen well to one another, and that they look at this as an equal relationship. And I think that I would encourage you and all the other youth leaders who are listening to always think of yourself as powerful and necessary in these relationships. Without leaders like you, without organizations like yours, funders have nothing to do. They can't come to results themselves, but they work with and through organizations. And so I think that partnership is extremely important. Funders should approach it with humility, and I think the youth leaders should approach it with courage, bold ideas, and persuasion. But tell me about how have you experienced it? Do we funders live up to that? What advice do you have for us?
Yes, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think, to be very honest, from the perspective of, and I'll speak perhaps representing the experiences of young people that are running grassroots organizations, because I believe a lot of youth-led organizations are small in scale and serving their immediate communities. And I've found that there is support, there is room for improvement as well. And in what I mean is, a lot of times when you're approaching a funder as a young person running a small organization, the issue that you spoke about in terms of the power imbalance exists because the resources are with the funder. And therefore, a lot of times it seems as if our organizations or youth-led organizations, it's like the issues that we're focusing on are determined by the big issue at the time. What is the in thing? Is it the environment? Okay, now then after 5 years, maybe it's women's rights. And a lot of our organizations are serving the immediate needs of our communities. So I think it's important for funders to really take into account the structure and systems and experiences of the small organizations or these grassroots organizations that young people are working with, but also to ensure that it's not just about the funding, but also working with or mentoring, going the extra mile to be able to support young people, even as we continue to build the organizations and to respond to the needs of our communities. And I think also another thing, and this ties actually to my next question, is grassroots organizations and also like the issues that we're facing today. We're seeing a lot of social movements coming up. The social movements in different countries, whether this is in Nigeria with End SARS, whether this is in the US with Black Lives Matter, so many different countries, social movements are coming up and leading all these conversations around reducing inequalities. And I'm curious as to your thoughts on how funding organizations and INGOs can be able to work with social movements. This is because, the structures, social movements perhaps wouldn't have the same structures as a traditional NGO. So how is it perhaps that funders can come on board and support or work with or walk alongside social movements?
All right, well, great question. Let me answer or respond to your first set of thoughts and then come to this question. You said resources are with the funders. Let's be specific. Money is with the funders, but money is not the most important resource. The most important resource is the vision and drive of the organizations and their leaders. Also, important things that will be present in youth-led organizations and community-based organizations in general are local knowledge, our trust, our a long-haul vision. You don't disappear during the rainy season or when it's impossible for people to travel internationally because of COVID. You are there, right? So from my perspective, most of the resources are with the youth-based organization. And I think in terms of Africa in particular, although I think this is probably true throughout the global South, there are really renewable and widespread resources in Africa that are not available elsewhere. I think the most important one is community solidarity, that people will pull together for one another reliably, much stronger as a phenomenon in Africa than in the global North. And the way that a funder can reach those phenomena is through organizations like yours. And it brings me a bit to movements, and I will admit we're struggling in the North, in the US, and in philanthropy to figure out what the best way is to work with movements. And part of that, I think, is that philanthropy has gotten into a very goal-oriented and metric-driven sort of mindset. I believe strongly, strongly in goals. I've been involved in child survival in Africa and have seen hundreds of millions of children vaccinated that would not have been vaccinated if there weren't goals. Millions of Africans would not be on antiretrovirals right now if people had not believed that that was possible and morally necessary. So goals are important, but a lot of the issues you're trying to tackle right now are need broad movements, cannot just have individual narrow goals. And they frankly need small p politics with people organizing and expressing their points of view. And that's done locally. That's not done by an offshore funder, right? It's certainly not directed by a funder. So I acknowledge that that's an important issue, how best to work with movements. We are thinking that through ourselves, and advice from people like you and people like the movements that you're talking about, I think is very important. I'd finish with one person who I think has really impressed all of us is Greta Tunberg, a 16-year-old high school student who has gotten the attention of world leaders and gotten virtually every parent that I can think of thinking about, well, wait, we have not done well by our children. We are not leaving our situation in a way that will that will suit them, that they can work with, that will be a good world for them. And I think that openness, that awareness is something we should all work on. And people of my age should be looking at how to pass the baton on best to people of your age.
Thanks. Thank you for that response. I think I agree. I am inspired a lot by Greta, and even just looking here closer home, I've seen a lot of the activism being taken on by younger and younger people, courageously and boldly. And I think one of the things that I have seen is it had been a challenge for me, particularly coming from the perspective of an activist and grassroots organizer, and then getting onto a space like the Commonwealth Youth Council that requires me to engage with governments or on a larger scale was just the difficulty in understanding the bureaucracy or the slow nature of response, because my approach was, this is the issue. We want to see change and we want to see it now. So I think that's another challenge, is that the ways in which, whether that's social movements or just youth-led organizations work, I feel is also not in tandem with the ways in which systems respond, and the ways in which these large machineries of organizations address issues or respond to issues as well.
Mm-hmm. And Nafula, forgive me if I use that elder's phrase, when I was your age, right? But I'm a child of the 1960s. And at that time, the world system had elements that you are seeking now in terms of both, say, independence for African countries, a real push for education in African countries, a push for civil rights in my own country. And I think there was a dynamism in the world system that there were certainly problems, big ones, right? But there was a spirit of tackling them. I think in the decades since, our system has gotten a bit old, right? Our leaders, but even the global multilateral system is 70 years old. It's built for the world coming out of World War II. It is not built for this century's challenges, migration, climate, et cetera. We need to rebuild. We need a new system, and it needs to be responsive. And really, I think what my generation and yours should be doing is putting our heads together on what is the system that will work well for the challenges of today, and how can we help put that into your hands?
I agree. It definitely requires us to think outside the box and be ready to have very difficult conversations moving forward. I'll go over to perhaps what will be the setting for our last question, or our final question. And this is in connection to what you've spoken about, but also in connection to COVID-19 and the challenges that it has presented to the world. And so all of a sudden, we have this global crisis, a health crisis that is also bringing about so many challenges. And it feels, especially when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, like we have taken a few steps back in many ways. I can tell you for a fact that in Kenya, for example, not just in Kenya, but also in a lot of African countries and other countries, we've seen cases of gender-based violence going up again. You know, the inequalities that existed in society are being manifested. Now we can see them. And so my question is, during this time, particularly when you look at this time of COVID, how can we, does it present any opportunities for leadership and innovation? What does authentic leadership and innovation look like? And how can we hold governments accountable, as well as play a role in ensuring that we actually achieve the Sustainable Development Goals despite this major setback?
Yeah. Wow. We got a couple hours, right? Well, yes, of course. I think COVID presents opportunities. I think it also, has some big challenges in it. The irony about COVID is that, generally speaking, the world has a good playbook for working on epidemics, as you can see, looking at New Zealand, at Taiwan, at Korea. There are countries that have, and at Kenya, countries that have responded quite well to the pandemic, but that's been uneven. So I think one thing to hold governments accountable for is do what you know how to do and do it well, right? This is it's a challenging disease, but we've had challenges before and we know how to respond to this. Now, you are absolutely right that we've taken our eyes off the prize in terms of the SDGs or the Paris Accords. Our horizon has become so short and so COVID focused that we're not giving enough attention to those. But even if we had no COVID outbreak, we would be woefully behind on the accomplishment of the SDGs. And that's because they've been put together without really the intention of accomplishment, but nice sounding goals that everyone agrees, yes, we should do this, but there hasn't been a game plan and there hasn't been adequate financing. Now, I think you can hold governments somewhat accountable for that, particularly for the financing part, because they're the ones who have the funds. But I think what I would ask of you and your generation, as you said before, you're creative, you're resourceful. Okay, we're going to put you to the test. Think through how we could actually accomplish those goals and do it in a way that is equitable and sustainable. And that requires different thinking from the thinking we've had so far. We haven't had an adequate implementation plan. We haven't had strong innovation. And I really would look to you. This is a little bit unfair of my generation, but I have greater hope in your ability to innovate, to be resourceful, and to be practical, and to be impatient in particular. My generation thinks incrementally. What can we do from this year to next? We'll do a 1% improvement, 1% improvement. By the end of the 15 years, the SDGs, 1% of the, how do we get there? I would part of that ball back in your court.
Thank you. That is a very, very heavy ball. But thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for those insights. I honestly think this conversation could go on for 2 hours. You're very right. And I'm sure the folks that are listening to us feel the same way. But I think I'll just wrap this conversation up by reiterating what you've said. This is, in order for us to move forward, we need to look at the SDGs as our collective goals, our collective agenda. And as young people, we need to recognize that the SDGs are about the world, that it's our world. It's the world that, the generation before us is living for us and, our children moving forward. And so we need to own them. And I think at the end of the day, things are shifting. And we need to also be able to think outside the box. We need to hold governments accountable, and as courageously and as boldly as Greta Tunberg has done, we should not drop the ball. And the challenges that we're facing today only give us an opportunity to be able to innovate and to be able to solve the challenges and ensure that these challenges, we don't face the same challenges tomorrow. So thank you so much for this conversation. It's been awesome having this conversation with you, particularly as a young person, and just to be able to listen to your perspectives. Thank you so much, really appreciate it. And I'll hand it back over to the IYF team. Thank you.
Thank you to Susan, Peter, and Nafula.
Nafula, we will be with you. Thanks.
Thank you once again to Susan, Peter, and Nafula, who have left us with plenty to reflect on in their remarks. I'd like to now call up 2 members of the Summit's Youth Advisory Committee, Anoka and Sibusisiwe, who will share some final thoughts on the work we've done together leading up to the summit and in the course of this week.
Thank you so much, Joel. So my name is Anoka, and we've heard from some incredible people from all walks of life from across the world. I think quite a few people mentioned diversity, and we had it in spades. So the reason why IYF is interested in each one of us is not because of where we come from, but more about what we have done in our communities and what you have done in your communities and how you are contributing to make your community a better place. And in a world full of chaos, what this summit wanted to really provide was hope and the tools the strategies and the skills for you to take them and own it and create possibly your own movements, to collaborate and to really break all those cycles of poverty, of political cycles, even generational gaps, just to break all those cycles and bring everyone together. And I really hope that each and every one of you have been inspired, as I have been, by all the incredible people who have been a part of this summit, so that maybe once you go back today, or maybe even tomorrow, you will think about maybe expanding, scaling up, and really owning the movements that you are creating. And if you haven't, maybe you'll start thinking about creating a movement or your own initiative today. So thank you so much to the IYF for making this happen. I think so many people really needed this. So a heartfelt thank you from us at the Youth Advisory Council, as well as IYF. Stay tuned and keep in touch with IYF, because some incredible things are coming up in the coming days. Over to you, Joel.
Hello, changemakers across the globe. My name is Subasisiwe and I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm part of the IYF Youth Advisory Committee for the Our Future, Our Voices Summit. As the summit comes to a close, it's been an incredible week of learning and interactions, and I sincerely hope you had as much fun as I did. It was amazing witnessing all those engagements between young people from across the globe. I particularly enjoyed the lively conversations that were taking place across the summit platforms. It was interesting to know that as young people, we share the same concerns, just at different levels and different contexts. But most importantly, it was exciting to hear of all the innovative approaches that young people and change makers across the globe are implementing in order to address these challenges. From issues to do with education, technology for development, mental wellness, civic engagement, and even youth participation in governance. The amazing work which was shared throughout the summit sessions opened a whole new world of possibilities and strategies which we as young people can tap into to create the future which we would like to see. Convening all those different actors from across the world created a platform for those people who are thinking of starting out or have already started out new initiatives for change to see that the future which they envision isn't just a figment of their imagination, but is indeed possible. On behalf of IYF Youth Advisory Committee and the rest of the team, I would like to express our gratitude for your participation and commitment throughout this whole summit experience. I must say it was an honor to be part of the team that organized this whole summit, and to see all your productive sessions and engagements was evidence that all the work that was put in to make the summit possible was not in vain. As one of the takeaways for the summit, I would like to encourage you to take action. I would like to encourage you to take little steps to achieve that which you want to see change within your community. It is those small incremental changes which contribute to the bigger impact in the long run. Lean into institutions and spaces which you would like to change. Complaining about the things that are wrong will not give you solutions, but it is important for you to be able to understand the systems that govern the spaces you want to change so that you can effectively innovate. It is also our hope that you are able to identify like-minded people with whom you can collaborate with and establish networks which help you do your work better. May this summit be a springboard for future engagements. May it help you translate all the knowledge that you acquired into actions. Remember, the summit content is available on IYF's platforms. Once more, thank you for participating in this summit. We wish you all the best in your current and future endeavors.
Thank you, Anoka. Thank you, Sibu, for your inspiring remarks. While this brings our session to a formal close, I do want to remind you of a few final elements that are still ongoing as we wrap up the summit. So first, for those of you who have already earned or will earn the participation points necessary to receive a certificate of participation. Please remember that you must also complete the summit evaluation form no later than this Sunday in order to receive your certificates digitally in the coming weeks. I also want to remind you that we have a final networking session at 3 p.m. US Eastern Time in just a few hours. And we really invite you to join us for a final moment of interaction and engagement with your peers, with speakers, and with the summit organizers. As Susan and Sibu also mentioned, the content on the platform will remain accessible to registered participants for viewing over the next year. But we're also going to be starting to share content on the IWF YouTube channel in the coming weeks, which will allow an even wider public to access the amazing content that our speakers and contributors have created. We can never be grateful enough. And I would like to extend a final thanks to some key actors who have made this summit possible. Our institutional partners, FedEx, Cummins, MasterCard Foundation, HSBC, TechChange, and the Conrad and Hilton Foundation. Our ASL interpreters, of course, who've helped to make our main stage sessions more accessible. The Youth Advisory Committee, who've held us accountable to the summit really being by, for, and with young people. Alex, Anna, Siwu, Anoka, Janarius, Arafat, Sisi, thank you. Also, I want to give a shout out to our core planning team with whom it's been an honor to collaborate. Ashok, Laura, Jill, Kat, Jesse, thank you. And finally, to all of the countless volunteers from both inside and outside of IYF who contributed their time, expertise, and know-how to make this event a success. Thank you for each of you for tuning in, and we hope to see you at the networking session later today.